So for the coaching tip of the week, I'm going to share a concept with you that we have covered before called the priority tree. But I would also like for all of us as the coaches sort of to add content to it, because I would like to refine the concept, if you will, and go in a little bit of greater depth. And ideally, what would come from this call is almost like a worksheet to help someone figure out if they are in alignment with their priority tree or not. I think one of the biggest things that get in the way of people's businesses is friction. Right? And friction creates fires. Fires are bad. No one ever plans a fire. But once a fire starts, it has to be tended to immediately or it gets exponentially worse. With this concept of the priority tree, when you're in alignment with it, further, faster, less fuel. When you're out of alignment with it, it causes friction. So priority tree, once again, it starts with you on top. You need to be in alignment with you, and then your spouse, then your kids, and then staff, and then clients, and then corporate stuff. So what I'd like to do is begin to sort of, what does it really mean to be in alignment with each of those things? And what could be potential checks? Like if we're working with the client, okay, like how do you know that you are in alignment with you? Okay, and as I was thinking about this, I think there's could be at least three elements. Are you in alignment with your mind, body, and spirit? And are you actively addressing each of those three things? Or is there any friction within yourself? Most of us are fighting a war within, but is the war getting out of hand? And what does the war look like, if at all? So once again, mind, body, spirit. And do you actively have a structure that takes care of each one of those things? Okay, anything else? How else be in alignment with self? Anything from you guys on this?
Well, I think mind, body, and spirit covers all the main aspects, and it's something that I use as a guide for me too when I'm looking at my vision and how I created my vision and my plan and my design of what I want to do. It really is around mind, body, and spirit, right? It's for the mind, it's the meditation, stillness on a regular basis. Body, it's this morning I just finished up a 4-mile ruck, and then it's spirituals, readings, whether it's whatever kind of spiritual reading it is, that those, I feel like when I have those three things, I check off the box and it makes it simple and easy to do. So that's how I see it.
I think maybe one of the ways to check into about alignment with self, are you being crazy? Are you crazy, depressed, up and down, sideways? Like, what is that self-evaluation of self? Are you motivated? Are you excited about your business? And mind you, you don't have to be excited every day, but in general, do you have a compelling future that you're living into? I think that's another big point is, do you have a compelling future? Is there a why behind your actions of showing up at the office or showing up at the boat, like Pete does, or Pete's office? Next level. Pete, next level. Okay, so there's you. Anything else around that?
Well, Ken, going back to that compelling future, I think that's huge, Ken, because that's about design, right? I know we like to talk about design a lot, and that's, if you've designed something and you've designed what your future looks like, then it's easy to kind of do a check on yourself to see, are you in alignment with mind, body, spirit, and so on, when you have that already drawn out and are very clear on it.
Perfect.
So do you have a plan in place? Are you following a vision
Yeah,
that you can
do you,
track?
right, do you know where you're going?
Yeah.
Or at least have an inkling?
Yep.
Right, and is there flesh around that? I like that. It's a good point.
Okay. Quickly from me, I just pulled it out. I've referenced it 100 times.
Uh-oh. The magic what? The magic.
There it is. And as a matter of fact, I went through it before our call today. It's very interesting just to look at, fun and recreation, physical environment, and all these areas of life. And what I look at it for, in terms of being in alignment, is which one bugs me right now? And in which one do I know that I'm, so for example, I feel really good about health. I feel really good about physical environment. I think I might have to work on the finance part. I'm doing okay, but I'm not doing what I want to be doing. So this thing is, for me, a really good guide.
Beautiful. Love the structure, right? Structure sets you free.
Yep.
Okay, so after alignment with self is alignment with spouse or significant other or life partner, or however you want to language that one. And what I think around spouse is that you have a consistent communication, right? Or you have a consistent date night. Do you have some sort of consistent communication check-in where it is just you and spouse? outside of kids. That could be a morning walk, you have lunch, you have date night, etc. It's just what I found is that if there's a consistent communication between you and your spouse, that prevents a lot of future fires. And remember, when a fire happens, it has to be addressed or it gets worse. And another point too with spouses is, do you both have a compelling future as well? Anything else around spouse, or what would you say, Gino?
Well, Super Coach, I think whenever you think you have enough communication with your spouse, you probably don't. So that's where you got to do those check-ins with your spouse to make sure that there is enough of those check-ins, because don't assume and don't, like we say, an uncommunicated expectation is a disappointment waiting to happen, right? So making sure that we're really in communication, and are there enough check-ins? Are we doing enough to stay connected with each other? That's
like
constant check-in.
What would be a good structure for a check-in? Is that more like a question?
I think, I look at that as almost a daily thing, is just to make sure that we've checked in enough and that they're getting the connection that they're looking for on a daily basis. And typically when I just ask, hey, how are you doing today? How are we doing today? Do we need to add another walk-in, or do we need to take 5 minutes and go out in the yard and have a tea or whatever that is? It's that just asking, how are we doing?
Beautiful. Any words of wisdom, John?
No, I'm good there. I do like the idea of scheduled kind of thing. So, whether it's a weekly check-in or kind of a structure around a schedule to make sure you don't forget or remember what needs to be remembered.
And Super Coach, I'll add one other thing to that. For those who do have kids, especially young kids, right? And you said it earlier, right? It's super important to try to carve out some of that time to not talk about the kids, because you're always going to want to go there. And I think one of the big things is that bond and that connection between that couple, you and your spouse. Yeah, right. Like, it's important to talk about other, like, compelling futures and other things, what's coming down the line, taking time off, all that stuff, because the kids can crowd out, as they're very important in our lives, but they can crowd out the two most important people, because if you don't have that good connection, then it's going to trickle down to the family, the rest of the family.
For the kids.
Right.
Okay. So in our priorities so far, you in alignment with you in alignment with spouse. And the third one we have are your kids. We just mentioned them a little bit. Like, how do you know that you're in alignment with your kids? I say another distinction is that you're literally spending time with them, that there is structured time with them, and that you also understand what lights them up. Like, what is their compelling future, or what is that thing, or areas that you can help enhance so they live a richer and fuller life. Like, my daughter is very much into dance. I was never much of a dancer, but I am learning all the wonderful things about dance and going to dance recitals, etc., and being very supportive of that and paying for that whole.
Know it well.
Yeah. Anything else with kids? How can you stay in alignment with your children?
So as they get older, and John, you could probably relate to this too. I set up my son and I weekly now have been doing coffee together. Right. And then we've actually just added in coffee, and because he's into golf now, at least trying to get into golf, we go hit golf balls at the driving range. We'll hit a couple buckets, and that's our connection. So to your point about what lights them up right now, that's what he's into. So it's a cool thing. And I'm actually improving my game too. Now, all of a sudden I want to go golfing. So I think you hit it on the head there. Is find out what lights them up and do that with them as best you can.
Perfect. And once again, when we're in alignment, further, faster, less fuel. Out of alignment, it creates friction, right? Friction creates fires. Fires are bad because if fires are not tended to, they have a tendency to burn down the entire town. Okay. And now, after you, your spouse, your kids, comes staff, or the people that you work with, your teammates, your colleagues, however we want to language this one, is staff. Like, how do we know, or how can we be in alignment with staff? I mean, this is the importance of a regular communication, whether that's a structured team meeting, a stand-up meeting, etc. Structure sets you free. You're also working an agenda, will help you. And then that you also know the future vision, or what's the compelling future of each of your staff members, and how can you help them bring that into existence. So I think that's a big thing around leadership. If you can help other people achieve their goals, their loyalty to you, I believe, increases exponentially. Okay. How about any comments or cues on staff? Yeah, I think it's those two simple things. I met a guy out in Kansas one time, and literally he had a folder with him of each of his employees or staff's 5 years vision of what they wanted to accomplish in 5 years, what their compelling future was, and he had it on his person at all times, and he would review it consistently and touch base with his people. And I was like, that's brilliant. That's a next level leadership right there. Okay.
Can I add something to that too? I think,
Of course.
engagement's super important, right? So I think making sure that your staff's engaged in the business, they understand the numbers and understand, why it's important to take on new assets if that's what process you're in, right? Or when it comes to a service model, is having them directly engage in that conversation, letting them help create that service model with you so that they're more engaged around it. And really important is the why. Like why do you ask them to do what they do, and why are you doing the different things you're doing, so that they understand it and are able to execute it much more effectively when they know why.
Beautiful. And then also, in investing in staff as well. We had one of our clients take his entire staff out for a cruise, like literally a cruise on a Carnival cruise ship, which is obviously not cheap, but the bonding experience of that. So investing in your people with time, attention, and treasure, often an exponential return on that. Okay. So after staff comes clients. Like, notice we haven't touched clients. Now, once again, priority tree. When you're in line with the priority tree, further, faster, less fuel. Unfortunately, what we see a lot of people do is put clients on the top of the priority tree. They put clients in front of themselves, their children, their spouse, as well as staff, which creates a lot of friction. So how do we know that we're in alignment with our clients? Okay, I think the simple answer is, are you delivering upon the promise? Are you working your client service model? And are you doing what you said you would do? Okay, that's one of the first distinctions. Are you doing what you said you're going to do? If you don't have a client service model, or if you don't have a regular call in or check in things with your clients, that means you're making it up, or you're embracing randomness. Nothing wrong with randomness. It's just that you'll never quite know if you're delivering upon the promise or not, which will eventually create fires, or you'll be in consistent reactive mode. Like, the more reactive you are with your clients, the more reactive you're going to become with your clients. The more structured you are, the more you're working a consistent client service model, the more you'll be ahead of inbound correspondence, inbound stuff. You'll have greater control in being proactive as compared to reactive. Okay. Anything? No? Good. Client service model. And then finally, in the last one around this priority tree is corporate stuff, or home office, or mothership stuff. Remember, mothership stuff should be at the bottom. Okay, now if you're an independent, you don't necessarily have to worry for that, but if you work at a wirehouse or a regional brokerage, sometimes the mothership wants to get involved in a lot of things. Nothing wrong with that. Just make sure you're clear on where you're operating from the priority tree, and they should be at the bottom, because everything above the mothership is about protecting the golden goose. Okay, everything below that is about protecting the mothership, and you should be more concerned with your individual practice than the mothership's galactic conquering. If that makes sense. And not to get anybody in trouble, we like motherships. Just a strong client's business is good for everybody.
Well, it starts with it's really, you got to make sure your clients. Otherwise, without clients, what do you got?
Yeah, without clients, you don't have a business.
So it should be first before that.
And without staff, it's just miserable. And without your kids, horrible. Without your spouse, it's very expensive. And if you're out of alignment and nutty, what's the point?
Ken, I think, when you look at from the kids up, if any of those are even off a little bit, it can really throw off your world, where you're just not even close to operating at optimal performance, right? It's just
spot on.
There, some days you start off wrong at home. Why bother even getting to the office? Because it's not going to be very effective. So.
Right. It's not going to be very. It's one of the most important investments. We've talked about this in one of our past podcasts about your number one client being your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Because all in, as men, we're pretty simple creatures. It doesn't take a lot for us to be happy, right? A lawn chair, a six pack, and a steak.
A Miller High
That's
Life.
the Miller High Life, like Coach John likes Miller High Lives. We can be pretty simple creatures. We don't need millions of dollars to have fancy houses and all this stuff. What really enhances that existence is your spouse, is your familial unit. And then, of course, what adds a whole other level of flavor this is to your kids. Like, why do you want to pass on estates or businesses? It's to the kids. So, and what's interesting about children too is that they add an entirely different motivational factor, right? That you're doing things for the family and setting things up properly for the family, so that the family then has a slight edge going into the future, right? It's the honorable and noble thing to do as a male, right? Toxic masculinity there, but. All right, cool. Anything else?
I would just add one other caveat to this from my perspective is the quote of "you will attract the people who believe what you believe." And so, as I was thinking about this, if you're somebody who believes in, for example, that you're responsible for all your outcomes, it's very important that you tell the truth to yourself, and then you'll attract somebody, i.e., a spouse, who also believes in this. And then that just kind of carries on forward. So if you're not telling the truth, so for example, if you say, "Hey, actually, I believe in this concept of I'm responsible for all my outcomes, but I run a business where I am kind of nutty," right? Now there's a false kind of thing. So right out of the gate, you're attracting somebody who doesn't even know what the story is and everything else. I find as you go through, by the time you get to clients and you have all this layers of people who understand who you are and what you believe, they know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more of a well-oiled machine. So tell the truth.
Yep, tell the truth. Tell the truth. I think that's a great point, John, because if you begin with the lie and you espouse the lie, you will then attract other people who either believe in the lie or are lying themselves, and therefore begins the downward spiral.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, that closes out our Coach's Call tip of the week. Thank you for listening in.